On this Blue Zoo TV episode, we're visiting Indianapolis, Indiana for award-winning ponds and koi. Here we are at Blue Zoo TV, and this week, presented by Hikari, we're visiting Show Koi. And those lovely fish belong to Mark Skaggs, who has a 12,000 plus pond tank. I call it a tank, it's a pond. And also Jonathan Dooley, who, JD, if I'm not mistaken, you kind of helped set this baby up, right?
Yeah, this was, I think our company broke, what, 4 skid steers that day trying to make this one?
it was a very, we are blessed with very hard ground, and they broke some dingoes here, like a little mini digging machine. They broke those, and the pond was supposed to be a little deeper, but unfortunately the equipment kept breaking, so it got a little wider, not quite as deep.
Well, one of the interesting things that I've seen in ponds before is I've really never seen this size koi. A lot of times you see littler ones, and there's 20 or 30 of them. Mm-hmm. Here you have 5, if I'm not mistaken,
we
5
have
females.
5 and 12,000 gallons, and they're all females. We actually buy fish to show, and the reason we try to do females, we don't want the spawning issues because that really can beat up the fish, and it's just about keeping the quality. We try to keep a minimum of 1,000 gallons per fish.
Well, I'm interested in the little, I guess the large bubbles in the middle, JD, because Mark was saying that you point them out. What do they actually do?
They're these are spin drifters, which is it's a bottom drain, which is the bottom drains where all the dirty water gets pulled from the pond and heads inside to the filtration. But with that column of rising air, it helps aerate the pond and also helps turn the pond and make it a much more turbulent place, so that a lot of the stuff on the bottom gets lifted up and ends up in the bottom drain where you want it.
Now, talking about winter, obviously here in Indiana,
Yep.
It gets cold.
Yep.
And what's the rule of thumb, JD, that the water is going to freeze 2 to 3 feet deep? Is that kind of how it is?
I always try to do everything 3 foot deep here in India, most of my ponds, but 18 inches you can actually squeak by, and it depends on how sheltered the pond is too. If it's out in the middle of the yard where there's nothing around it, no, it's going to freeze. But if it's up tucked against a building or some kind of break, it's going to help keep it from getting colder.
But the other issue to remember too is we don't leave our pond out in the open. We actually build a hoop house over top of our pond for the winter time.
There's a greenhouse over this whole pond come winter.
And my water temperatures through the winter will mainly stay in the mid-40s. This past winter, because it was so cold here, we did probably touch some temperatures in the upper 30s for a while. But we do that, and it allows the fish to have a lot better winter.
You know, it sounds like you take care of your fish better than most people take care of me. I'm thinking about moving over here.
Well, at different times we'll feed the fish watermelon. We'll feed them bananas. My guys actually really like bananas. We'll feed them some oranges, like sweet potatoes, and then they also have their normal pellet food.
From the leader in aquatic nutritional innovation, the world's first diets that include a living microorganism, Hikari germ. These spore-form bacteria become live once inside the digestive tract of your fish and overpower bad bacteria, reducing their negative impact on your fish while increasing enzymatic action, allowing more efficient use of the nutrients and color-enhancing ingredients. They also work to decompose waste once it leaves your fish's body, helping to improve your water quality. Try Sake Hikari and put the Hikari germ to work for you.
JD, I kind of know what Mark is doing, but explain, what is he doing?
He is letting the fish choose which fish wants to come out right now, because it's a lot easier than trying to catch a specific one, and it looks like he's caught himself a nice chagoi.
The biggest thing you've always got to remember whenever you're trying to catch a fish out of the pond is you don't want to take a lot of stabs at it. You just want to kind of be gentle.
So whenever they go to a show, this is obviously the process they always have to do.
Yeah, and this is actually going really well. Usually Tamara's upside down in the pond by now, so it's
So they grab the fish and you put it in this measuring bowl or measuring tank.
Yep, and see what the sock's actually made to hold water, so when they lift them out, there's water around the fish, keeps them nice and protected, doesn't hurt anything. There's no scales getting caught in the nets and stuff like that. So when you're dealing with larger fish, this is the only way to do it. If you do it pretty much any other way, you're risking damage to the animal. So when these are show koi, you don't want your show koi damaged.
So when you take a fish like this to the show, is the first thing they basically do is measure it?
Usually they're looking for size, then they'll go through their individual judging for different size. So right now we can see this chagoi's 70 centimeter.
27 inches.
Yep. How old would you guess she's at?
She's 4 years old.
4 years old, so.
Now, how much bigger will she get and how old can she be?
We very much think that she'll eventually be around 32 to 36 inches.
Wow.
She has a great bone structure with her. and the quality that she is, she just, you know, she's keeping a really nice body conformation, and a lot of it just comes back to when you keep koi, you're not really keeping the koi, you're keeping the water, and it's about keeping the water quality. They've been known koi to live as many as 200 years.
200 years.
200 years.
200 years.
It's been recorded in history.
Okay.
I'd say in general, 30 to 40 years would be nothing. Chagois are probably about the closest as you come to a wild carp, and they're very friendly. They actually help to calm your fish down. And if you notice the shininess on the scales, she's actually considered ginrin. It's kind of like a lacquer. You took lacquer paint and sprayed on her.
You know, I understand that you have a state-of-the-art filtration system, and we'd sure like to take a look at it. You mind showing us?
Nope, go right ahead. One thing to understand is you see where the air's at coming up on the pond, that's bottom drains, and that is all running to our basement. We have all of our filtration in our basement, so it doesn't matter if we have an Indiana thunderstorm or a snowstorm, I can go down and flush my filters at all times.
Well, let's check it out. Mark, obviously having fish of this quality, you know, quality show fish, you have to feed them something healthy. Tell us what you kind of give your girls.
Well, we actually usually feed a combination of different foods, but one of the foods that we feed at, you know, at different times, it depends on the water temperatures, is we'll feed some Hikari food. And the biggest thing you got to understand there on your foods, you don't buy good quality fish and feed them a cheap food. One of the things we kind of look for is we look for waste in the pond. If we're feeding a food that we see a lot of waste in the pond, then we kind of question that, but we don't have that problem with the Hikari foods.
Now, is it easy to tell once you say you give them some Hikari food, can you tell that their coloration is better? Is that big of a difference? Like if you give some cheap food, can you see a washout a little bit on the fish?
That, and sometimes people want to feed too many of the color foods, and then what you will start seeing, you'll start seeing the whites kind of yellow up and everything.
Okay, we're back with Mark and JD, and you guys were talking about how you had a great setup for your filtration in your pond. Now we're in your basement, and you guys have to explain a little bit about what this huge setup is. JD, why don't you start?
Well, outside we saw those spindrifter bottom drains, and basically this is where all that comes in from the pond into the filtration unit. Now these are gravity filters, and what's neat about these are an active bio-gravity filter, where the actual, up in top here, there's a biomedia. It's called coldness. And that stuff is driven by these air pumps, so that keeps it clean at all times. So basically, you've got a biomedia that's constantly moving, constantly keeping itself clean, and that leads to the best kind of biofiltration. All the stuff that builds up in the filters, you can just turn a valve, flush it right away. So
when you do a water change, is it as simple as siphoning water out from up top, or do you come down here and do it here?
Everything down here in the basement, I never get my hands wet, I never bend over. The ease of maintenance on your pond is the number one thing. If you got to constantly do a major chore on your pond every day, and it's a lot of work, it's not enjoyable.
Now, JD, you're involved in the pond hobby and the business and the industry. This case, this is a Rolls Royce, the Cadillac, you know, the BMW of filtration for a pond, is it not?
This is probably one of the most user-friendly setups I've seen so far. That's probably the best thing about it is, like you said, it can be 3 foot of snow outside, he can be down here doing maintenance on his filters and keeping his fish happy, you know, which that's a hard thing to get.
So Mark, we see all this plastic and PVC, but right in the corner, you have something lit up. What is that?
It's our UV unit. You know, if the fish are in a mud pond, you're not going to be able to see them, but we definitely want to be able to see them. So we have a UV bulb on there, and all the water passes through there and helps to kill the small particle algae. It's a very needed item. Just got to make sure you size it right for your pond.
Mark and JD are the only guys that can change 5,000 gallons of water and not get a single drop on them. Try doing that with your 10-gallon tank. To learn more about koi foods, go to hikariusa.com. To learn more about the show or to email us, go to bluezootv.com.